Amber's hand slammed a crumpled bill onto the mahogany dining table. $5,000 for what she called accumulated expenses. Her voice cracked with rage as she screamed it was over. Either we paid this immediately or both went to a nursing home. I felt my world tilting. George had been completely silent through dinner, barely touching his food. Now he slowly stood, adjusted his gray suit jacket with deliberate movements, and locked eyes with Amber. His expression carried such deep sorrow that everyone froze. My mind flashed back 3 years to the phone call that changed everything. Nathan's voice had been shaking on the line, and I could barely understand him through his sobs. The twins were hit by a drunk driver while walking home from school. Both girls survived but with serious injuries. Emma had a fractured spine. Sophie suffered a traumatic brain injury. George and I were living comfortably in our paid-off ranch home in rural Vermont at the time. George had just retired after 35 years as a civil engineer for the state. We had saved $240,000 for our retirement. It felt like enough. We had plans to travel, to spend time in the garden, to finally relax after decades of hard work. Within hours of Nathan's call, we drove 8 hours to the hospital in New Jersey. The girls spent 5 weeks in pediatric intensive care. I will never forget the sight of those tiny bodies connected to so many machines, their faces bruised and swollen. Emma couldn't move her legs. Sophie didn't recognize us for the first 3 days. Nathan's insurance covered the immediate medical costs, but not the aftermath. The girls needed specialized therapy, home modifications, 24-hour care initially. Nathan worked in pharmaceutical sales with a good income, but it wasn't enough for this kind of crisis. Amber had been working part-time as a bookkeeper but quit immediately to care for the girls full-time. Medical bills that insurance didn't cover started piling up. $15,000 for equipment and specialists. Then $30,000. The house needed wheelchair ramps, bathroom modifications, specialized beds. Every week brought new expenses we hadn't anticipated. George and I made the decision together one night in the hospital cafeteria, sitting under harsh fluorescent lights with cold coffee. We would sell our Vermont home, move in with Nathan's family, and use our retirement savings to cover all expenses. Not as a loan, as a gift to our son during the worst crisis of his life. Our Vermont house sold quickly. After closing costs, we netted $210,000. We packed up 40 years of memories into a moving truck and arrived at Nathan and Amber's spacious colonial home, ready to help however we could. For the first year, our presence felt purposeful and meaningful. George paid for Sophie's cognitive therapy, 3 sessions weekly at $200 per session. I covered Emma's physical therapy, twice weekly at $150 per session. We hired a part-time aide to help Amber with daily care, paying from our funds. We covered all groceries, utilities, property tax increases, everything. The girls slowly, miraculously, improved. By 18 months, Emma was walking again with only a slight limp. Sophie's cognitive function returned to nearly normal levels. Both girls returned to school with special accommodations. It felt like we had witnessed a miracle. By year 2, the crisis had passed. The girls were thriving, running around the backyard, laughing, nearly back to their old selves. But our savings were down to $43,000. George and I didn't talk much about it. We were just grateful the girls were okay. Nathan's career had actually flourished during this time. He was promoted to regional sales director with a significant raise. Amber returned to work part-time, but at a higher-paying corporate bookkeeping position. The family was financially stable again, actually better off than before the accident. But something had shifted in ways I couldn't quite name. Nathan and Amber started going out more, taking weekend trips without the girls. They would leave on Friday evening and return Sunday night, leaving George and me to babysit. We loved spending time with Emma and Sophie, but Nathan and Amber never asked. They just assumed we would be available. Amber began making comments about the house being crowded. She mentioned how nice it would be to have the guest suite back for her home office. Nathan would shush her quickly, saying, "Mom and Dad are family," but his reassurances felt hollow, like words he knew he should say but didn't fully mean. By year 3, I noticed Amber's tone had changed completely. The warmth was gone, replaced by cold politeness. She would answer my questions with one-word responses. She stopped making eye contact. The twins, now 9 years old, remained affectionate with us. But Amber discouraged it subtly, scheduling activities during our usual time with the girls. Last month, Amber announced she wanted to redecorate the guest suite we occupied. Nathan quickly said, "Maybe next year," but I saw Amber's jaw tighten with resentment, saw the flash of anger in her eyes before she turned away. George had been withdrawing too, spending more time in our room. When I asked what was wrong, he would just say he was tired. But I knew my husband of 47 years. Something was eating at him, keeping him up at night. I could hear him moving around when he thought I was asleep. That's the context for what happened at dinner tonight. 3 years of living in our son's home. 3 years of watching the family we saved slowly turn cold toward us. 3 years of feeling like intruders in a house our money had helped sustain during its darkest time. Amber stood at the head of the dining table, breathing hard, her face flushed after slamming down that bill. The itemized list claimed 3 years of room and board at $1,500 monthly, plus utilities, food, and what she vaguely called incidentals. The total came to $5,000. Though I couldn't follow her math, Nathan stood behind Amber, his hand on her shoulder, but his face looked conflicted. He wouldn't meet my eyes. George's sorrowful stare continued, but he hadn't spoken yet. The silence stretched out, broken only by Amber's heavy breathing. Amber broke first, her voice rising higher. "You've overstayed your welcome. You've taken advantage of our generosity for 3 years." I tried to speak, but my voice came out shaking. "Amber, we gave everything to help you when the girls were hurt," her response cut like a knife. "And we've housed you for 3 years. That debt is paid." I felt like I'd been slapped. Debt? We had given our retirement, our home, our security out of love, and she was calling it a debt that needed repaying? Then Amber played what she clearly thought was her trump card. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through her videos, and turned up the volume. "You want to know why you really need to leave? Because you're destroying my family." The video showed Emma and Sophie sitting on Emma's bed in their shared bedroom. The purple comforter I had bought them for Christmas was visible in the background. A voice off camera, Amber's voice, asked, "Girls, do you love your grandparents?" Both girls nodded enthusiastically, their faces lighting up. The voice asked, "More than Mommy." The girls hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. Sophie, who had always been more outspoken, said softly, "Sometimes we wish Grandma and Grandpa were our parents." Emma added in her quieter voice, "They're nicer. They have more time for us." The video ended. Amber's eyes were both triumphant and wounded as she looked at us. "You've turned my daughters against me. You've undermined my authority for 3 years. You've made me the villain in my own home." I felt sick, genuinely nauseated. I had no idea the girls felt this way. The thought that our presence might have damaged Amber and Nathan's relationship with their own children horrified me. Maybe we had overstayed. Maybe we had caused harm without meaning to. Nathan finally spoke, his voice barely audible. "Amber, maybe this isn't the right way to handle this." But Amber spun toward him. "No, Nathan. We've talked about this. They need to know the truth. They need to understand what they've done." Then George finally spoke. His voice was quiet but steady. "Amber, when did you record that video?" Amber blinked, thrown by the question. "Last week. Why does that matter?" George reached into his suit jacket, the same deliberate movement I'd seen him make 1,000 times when he was solving a problem. He pulled out his phone. His hands were steady, despite the emotion I could see in his eyes. "I'm going to show you something. Nathan, I need you to watch carefully." He opened his photos, found a video, and played it. The same bedroom appeared on his screen, the same angle, but recorded from outside the doorway. George must have been standing in the hallway. The timestamp showed the same day and time as Amber's video. In George's version, we could hear the full conversation. Amber's voice came clearly. "Girls, Grandma and Grandpa might leave soon. How would that make you feel?" Both girls looked upset. Emma actually started crying. Amber's voice continued, But what if I told people you didn't love Mommy as much as them? Would you say that for the camera? Sophie's confused voice. But we love you, Mommy. Amber's voice, sharper now. I know, sweetie. This is pretend. For a game, just say what I told you earlier. The girls, clearly uncomfortable but wanting to please their mother, repeated the exact lines from Amber's edited video. George's recording continued past where Amber had cut hers off, showing Amber saying, "Perfect, girls. Now delete this from your memory." It was just pretend. The dining room fell completely silent. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Nathan's face had gone pale. As he stared at his wife, Amber, his voice was barely a whisper. "What is this?" Amber's face cycled through shock, anger, fear, and finally defensiveness. "I can explain, Nathan. You don't understand the full picture. They were taking over. I needed evidence that they were causing problems." Nathan stepped away from her, moving toward his father. I watched my son's face as he processed what he'd just seen. His wife had manipulated their daughters, coached them to say hurtful things, all to manufacture evidence against us. Georges' sorrow seemed to deepen as he spoke. "I've known something was wrong for weeks, Amber. I saw how you looked at us, how you'd pull the girls away when we were talking to them. I started paying attention." He explained that he had noticed Amber going into the girls' room with her phone several evenings over the past 2 weeks. He could hear her voice through the door, sounding like she was coaching them on something. One night, his instincts told him to stand outside with his own phone recording. He captured the whole manipulation. "I've been carrying this," George said, his voice heavy. "Hoping I was wrong. Hoping there was some explanation. That's why I've been so quiet lately. Bridget. I didn't know what to do with this knowledge." I stared at Amber, this woman I had known for 12 years. I had been at her wedding. I had held her hand in the hospital when the girls were born. I had loved her like a daughter. And she had done this. But more than betrayal, I felt confusion. Why? Why would she go to such lengths? What had we done that was so terrible it warranted this kind of deception? The tension in the dining room felt suffocating. Amber was trapped, caught in her own manipulation. Nathan demanded answers, his voice rising for the first time all evening. "Amber, why? Why would you do this?" Before she could respond, we heard the front door open. Keys jangled, heels clicked on the hardwood floor. A woman in her mid-60s walked into the dining room, elegant in a camel-colored coat, carrying a designer purse. Patricia, Amber's mother. She lived 2 states away in Virginia and rarely visited. Patricia took in the scene with a single glance. The bill on the table, George's phone still displaying the video, Amber's guilty expression, Nathan's angry confusion, my tear-stained face. "Oh, Amber." Patricia's voice carried disappointment but not surprise. "You didn't." Amber's face crumbled. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Patricia ignored the question and addressed Nathan directly. "Nathan, I drove 5 hours because my conscience wouldn't let me stay silent anymore." She sat at the table without being invited, setting down her purse with deliberate care. Then she began to speak. Amber's Aunt Dorothy had died 4 months ago. Dorothy was Patricia's older sister, never married, no children. She'd been wealthy from a successful career in real estate development. Her will left her entire estate, valued at $420,000 after taxes, to Amber. Amber had been Dorothy's favorite niece, the only family member who visited regularly when Dorothy was sick. The inheritance made sense. But Dorothy's will had specific conditions attached. Dorothy had believed strongly in family caring for family. She'd grown up in multi-generational households and wanted her money to support that tradition. The inheritance would only transfer to Amber if she was actively providing care for elderly relatives in her home. If the condition wasn't met within 5 years of Dorothy's death, the money would go to charity instead. When Dorothy died, George and I were already living with Nathan and Amber. Patricia had assumed this satisfied the condition perfectly. Amber would inherit, and it honored Dorothy's wishes for family taking care of family. But 3 months ago, Patricia visited for a weekend. She overheard Amber on the phone with the estate attorney, arguing about the will's interpretation. Amber was claiming that George and I didn't count because we weren't her blood relatives, and besides, we weren't truly in need of care. We were independent, healthy, active. The attorney had been firm. The will was clear. Elderly relatives of anyone in the household counted. In-laws absolutely counted, but only if they genuinely needed care and support. Bridget and George were too healthy, too independent. For the condition to be met, Amber needed elderly relatives who were actually dependent on her care. Patricia confronted Amber that same weekend. Amber had broken down and admitted she'd been trying to figure out how to get the inheritance. She thought if she could prove George and I were a burden, were causing family problems, she'd have grounds to make us leave. Then she could bring Patricia to live with them instead. Patricia had some health issues, high blood pressure, early-stage arthritis. She could qualify as needing support. Amber's plan was to force us out, bring her mother in, and satisfy the will's conditions. Patricia had refused. She told Amber to let the inheritance go. But Amber became obsessed. $420,000 consumed her thoughts. She started manufacturing problems. Patricia continued, her voice heavy with sadness. Creating evidence that you two were a burden. That $5,000 bill is fabricated. It includes inflated costs and completely invented expenses. The video with the girls was meant to prove you were damaging the family. Evidence she could use if you refused to leave quietly. Nathan had been listening with growing horror. $400,000? Amber, we don't need that money. My income is good. Your job pays well. We're comfortable. We're more than comfortable. Amber finally spoke, her voice breaking. You don't understand. That money was supposed to be mine. Aunt Dorothy wanted me to have it. I've been planning what to do with it for years, even before she died. The truth spilled out between sobs. Amber had been counting on this inheritance since Dorothy was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago. She'd made detailed plans. Renovating the kitchen and bathrooms, buying a vacation property at the beach, private schools for the twins, a new car for herself. When Dorothy died and Amber read the will's conditions, she'd thought it was perfect timing. Her in-laws were already living there. But when the estate attorney explained that George and I were too healthy and independent to satisfy the requirement, Amber's dreams shattered. She became resentful of our health, our independence. She started seeing us as obstacles instead of family. Every time she looked at us, she saw $420,000 slipping away. I sat in stunned silence as the full picture emerged. The coldness, the comments, the subtle cruelty. It had never been about us personally. It was about money Amber felt entitled to but couldn't access because of a legal technicality. George spoke softly. Amber, you were willing to destroy our family for money you didn't earn, Patricia added firmly. And I won't be part of this scheme. I'm not moving in here to help you satisfy that will. Dorothy wanted her money to support genuine care and love, not manipulation. If you'd asked me to move in because you actually wanted to care for me, because you loved me, that would be different. But this? No. Amber buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. Nathan stood frozen, watching his wife fall apart, watching his marriage crack open to reveal something ugly underneath. The dining room felt like a courtroom after a guilty verdict. Nathan sat heavily in his chair, his head dropping into his hands. Amber was crying, mascara streaking down her face in black rivers. Nathan, please. Amber's voice was desperate, pleading. I made a mistake. I got carried away, but I never stopped loving you or the girls. You have to believe me. Nathan looked up at his wife, the woman he'd been married to for 12 years. You staged a video using our daughters. You manufactured evidence against my parents, who sacrificed everything when Emma and Sophie almost died. His voice wasn't angry, which somehow made it worse. It was hollow, disappointed, grieving. I don't know who you are right now. Amber reached for him, but Nathan stood up and moved away. He turned to face George and me. Mom, Dad, I'm so sorry. For not seeing this sooner. For not protecting you from it. for allowing you to be treated this way in a home you helped us keep." My heart broke for my son. I could see the pain in his eyes, the shame. I moved to hug him, and Nathan held on to me like he was drowning. George put his hand on our son's shoulder, steady and reassuring. Nathan pulled back, wiped his eyes. "I need you both to stay. Please. The girls need you. I need you." Amber made a sound of protest, but Nathan faced her with unexpected firmness. "Amber, I think you should stay with your mother for a while. We need space. I need time to figure out if our marriage can survive this." Patricia stood up. "Amber, get your things. You're coming with me tonight." "Nathan, you can't do this." Amber's voice rose in panic. "What about the girls? What will we tell them?" Nathan's voice remained firm. "The girls will be fine. They have me and their grandparents, people who put them first, who don't use them as pawns." Amber stumbled toward the stairs, her world collapsing around her. Patricia apologized quietly to George and me. "I raised her better than this. I don't know where I went wrong." I found myself saying, "People make mistakes when they're hurting or afraid. Maybe Amber can find her way back to who she's supposed to be." 20 minutes later, Amber came downstairs with a hastily packed suitcase. She paused at the bottom of the stairs, looked at Nathan with desperate hope in her eyes. He couldn't look at her. Patricia took her daughter's arm and led her out to the car. After the door closed behind them, Nathan said he needed to talk to the girls. They'd been upstairs in their room this whole time, probably hearing bits and pieces of the chaos below. He climbed the stairs slowly, like a man walking to his own execution. George and I waited in the living room. I could hear Nathan knock on the girls' door. No answer. The sound of the door opening. Then silence. Then Nathan's footsteps running back down the stairs. "They're gone." His voice was pure panic. "The window's open, the screen is off." He thrust a piece of paper at us. On it, in Sophie's distinctive handwriting, "We heard everything. Nobody's happy. We're going to Grandma and Grandpa's old house in Vermont so we can all start over together. Don't worry, we'll be fine." My blood ran cold. The Vermont house had been sold 3 years ago, but the girls didn't know that. They thought it was still there, still ours, still a safe place where everyone had been happy once. It was 8 hours away. 2 9-year-old girls trying to make that journey alone. George immediately called 911. Within minutes, police arrived. An Amber Alert was initiated. Nathan was frantic, calling out the girls' names as if they might be hiding nearby. But they were gone. Officers checked security cameras from neighboring houses. They found footage of Emma and Sophie walking down the street toward the main road at 7:30 that evening. It was now 9:15, nearly 2 hours head start. The police mobilized quickly, checking bus stations and train stations. George, thinking like the engineer had always been, mapped out possibilities. The girls were smart but only 9 years old. They would need transportation. The local bus station was 2 miles away, walkable for determined children. Police rushed there and reviewed security footage. My heart sank as they confirmed what I feared. Emma and Sophie had bought 2 tickets to Port Authority in New York City using money from Sophie's piggy bank. They were trying to connect to a Vermont-bound bus line. Their bus had left at 8 o'clock. Police contacted Port Authority immediately, requesting officers meet the bus and locate the girls. Nathan, George, and I drove toward New York, 90 minutes away. The car ride was silent except for Nathan's ragged breathing and my whispered prayers. We arrived at Port Authority at 10:45. Police had found the girls, but something was wrong. Sophie had collapsed in the terminal. She was being loaded into an ambulance as we arrived. The stress, the running away, had triggered a seizure. Sophie still had them occasionally, a lingering effect of her brain injury. They usually happened under extreme stress. Emma was hysterical, crying so hard she could barely breathe. A female police officer was trying to comfort her, but Emma was inconsolable. Nathan ran to the ambulance where paramedics were working on Sophie. She was conscious but disoriented, her eyes unfocused. The paramedics said she needed to go to the hospital for evaluation. Nathan climbed into the ambulance without hesitation. George and I took Emma in our car, following the ambulance to the nearest emergency room. Emma sobbed in the back seat the entire drive. I climbed back to sit with her, and she buried her face against me. Between sobs, she choked out words that broke my heart into pieces. We just wanted everyone to be together and happy. Why is mommy so mean to you? Why can't we all just love each other? I held my granddaughter tight, feeling her small body shake with grief. Oh, sweetheart, sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, big mistakes, but running away isn't the answer. You scared us so much. Emma cried harder, but Sophie said if we went to Vermont, to your old house, we could all start over, like when we were happy before everything got bad. I understood then. These children, who had survived a horrific accident, who had fought their way back to health, were now casualties of adult dysfunction. They'd been trying to save us all, the only way they knew how. The hospital waiting room was nearly empty at midnight. Sophie was being examined, Nathan staying with her. Emma had finally fallen asleep, her head resting on my lap, tear tracks still visible on her cheeks. George brought coffee from a vending machine, his hands shaking slightly as he handed me the cup. We sat in silence, processing everything that had happened in the span of a few hours. A nurse eventually came out and said Sophie was stable. The seizure had been moderate, brought on by stress and exhaustion. They wanted to keep her overnight for observation. Nathan could stay with her. Emma should go home and sleep in her own bed. Nathan had called Amber from the hospital to tell her what happened. Whatever their problems, she needed to know her daughter was in the emergency room. Amber was already driving back from Virginia. George and I took Emma home. The house felt empty and cold. I got Emma settled into bed, and she clung to me. Please don't ever leave us, Grandma. I stroked her hair and promised, we're not going anywhere, sweetheart. After Emma finally fell asleep, I went downstairs. George was in the kitchen, staring at nothing. I realized Wed left Nathan's car at the hospital. Head ridden in the ambulance, and Wed driven our old sedan. Nathan would need his car in the morning. George offered to drive it back first thing. I remembered Nathan's briefcase was in his car. He might need documents from it. I went to the garage to retrieve it. Nathan's black SUV sat in the dim garage. I opened the passenger door and found his briefcase on the seat. As I lifted it, papers slid out onto the floor. I knelt to gather them, and that's when I saw the letterhead from an investment firm. I knew I shouldn't look. These were Nathan's private papers, but one sheet showed my name clearly, regarding repayment plan for Bridget and George Harrison. My hands moved almost without my permission, pulling that paper out to read it. It was a letter Nathan had written to his investment advisor 3 months earlier. Nathan acknowledged that he owed George and me $167,000. That was the amount Wed spent from our retirement savings on the twins' recovery. Nathan had told us not to worry about repayment, that we were family, but apparently had been quietly planning to pay us back. The letter outlined how Nathan had been setting aside $2,000 monthly into a dedicated repayment fund. Over 3 years, had accumulated $72,000. I felt tears spring to my eyes. Our son had been trying to make things right, but then the letter took a different turn. Nathan explained that he was redirecting those funds. Instead of continuing the repayment plan, he was establishing trust funds for the twins, $25,000 for each girl for future college expenses. The remaining $22,000 would serve as an emergency medical fund in case either girl had setbacks. Nathan wrote, "My parents would want the girl's future secured more than being repaid. I'll find another way to repay them eventually." More papers followed, the actual trust fund documents, established 2 months ago. Both were co-signed by Amber. I sat on the cold garage floor, papers scattered around me. Nathan had been saving to repay us. That meant something. It meant he recognized the sacrifice Wed made, but then had chosen to redirect that money to his daughters instead. As a mother, as a grandmother, I understood. Of course the girls' futures mattered. Of course Nathan wanted to secure college funds for them. But Head never discussed this with us. Never asked if we needed that money. Just assumed Wed agree with his choice. And Amber had known. Shed signed those trust documents. She knew that $72,000 was sitting in accounts for the girls. Money that represented our retirement security was now locked away for years. That's why Amber had been so desperate for the inheritance. The trust funds totaled $72,000. Without the $420,000 from Aunt Dorothy, there was no extra money for house renovations or vacation properties. All their surplus income had gone to securing the girls' futures. I felt a complicated tangle of emotions. Pride that Nathan wanted to provide for his daughters, hurt that he hadn't consulted us, understanding of Amber's frustration, though certainly not her actions, and a growing realization that this family's financial situation was far more complex than Id understood. George appeared at the garage door. He saw me sitting on the floor surrounded by papers and came over quickly. "What's wrong? What is that?" I showed him. George read in silence, his face expressionless. When he finished, he said simply, "He meant well. But George, we're living on $43,000 of retirement savings. Our Social Security and your pension cover our basic needs, but barely. Nathan has $72,000 sitting in trusts without even telling us." George sat down beside me on the cold concrete. "Do we tell him we know?" I thought about it. Not tonight. Not with Sophie in the hospital and his marriage falling apart. But soon, because we need to have honest conversations about money. All of us. No more secrets, no more assumptions. We gathered the papers and went back inside. That night, I lay awake thinking about how money complicates everything, how good intentions can still cause pain, how family love gets twisted when nobody talks openly about needs and expectations. In the morning, Nathan called. Sophie was being released. Amber was at the hospital. They were bringing Sophie home together, and then Amber would leave again. Nathan said everyone needed to talk, really talk this time. I agreed, adding that George and I had things to discuss too. Things we'd discovered. Nathan's voice filled with apprehension, but he didn't ask what. Maybe he was too tired for more revelations. Or maybe he already suspected we'd found something. The real conversations, the honest ones, were about to begin. Sunday afternoon arrived with gray skies and cold wind. 3 days had passed since Sophie's hospital stay. Emma and Sophie were at Patricia's house, protected from what was sure to be a difficult adult conversation. We gathered in Nathan's living room. Nathan and Amber sat at opposite ends of the sectional sofa. George and I took the love seat. The space between everyone felt intentional, like we all needed distance to feel safe. Nathan started. "We need complete honesty. About money, about expectations, about everything that's been left unsaid." I placed the trust fund documents on the coffee table. Nathan's face showed surprise, then embarrassment. "Mom, I was going to tell you about those." George held up a hand. "Son, let us speak first." I explained calmly that we appreciated Nathan wanting to secure the girls' futures. We understood his heart was in the right place. But we needed him to understand our situation too. George and I had $43,000 remaining from the $240,000 we'd started with. Our monthly Social Security totaled $3,200 combined. George's pension from his years at the engineering firm added another $800 monthly. Our total income was $4,000 each month. We had no mortgage because we lived here, but we couldn't live here forever. Eventually, we'd need our own place. Medical expenses would increase as we aged. That $43,000 was our only cushion, our only safety net. The $72,000 Nathan had set aside would have provided breathing room. Not luxury, just security. The knowledge that we wouldn't be destitute if something went wrong. Nathan looked stricken. "I thought you were comfortable. You never said anything about struggling." George's voice was gentle but firm. "We didn't want to burden you during the crisis with the girls. And after, you seemed to be dealing with so much stress in your marriage." We stayed quiet. Amber spoke for the first time, her voice small. "I told Nathan to set up those trusts." We all looked at her. She continued, words tumbling out. "I knew his original plan was to repay you. I convinced him the girls needed that security more. That you would understand. That family doesn't keep score," I said gently. "Family doesn't keep score, Amber. But family also communicates. We deserve to be part of that decision." Amber nodded, tears starting. I know I've been terrible. To all of you. I don't know how to make it right, Nathan said. We're past blame, we need solutions. Mom, Dad, I'm going to liquidate those trusts immediately and repay you. No. My voice was firm. Everyone looked surprised. The girls do need that money for their futures. We won't take their security. But Nathan, you're going to start paying us $800 monthly from your current income. It'll take years, but we'll get repaid, George added. And we're going to start looking for a small apartment or condo nearby. We need our independence back. We need our own space. Before anyone could respond, the doorbell rang. Nathan answered it, confusion on his face. Standing on the porch were two women I didn't recognize. One was in her early 50s, professional in dark slacks and a blazer. The other was younger, maybe late 20s, wearing a cardigan over a dress. Both looked serious. The older woman said, "I'm Mrs. Lauren Patterson, school counselor at Elmwood Elementary. This is Miss Rachel Torres, Emma and Sophie's fourth-grade teacher. I'm sorry to arrive unannounced, but after what happened Thursday night with the girls running away, we felt we needed to speak with you." Nathan invited them in. We all remained in the living room, now joined by these two women, who clearly had something important to say. Mrs. Patterson sat on the edge of an armchair and opened a folder she'd been carrying. Inside were papers, drawings, and what looked like school assignments. "These are work samples from Emma and Sophie over the past 3 months," she explained. "After the incident, we reviewed their recent assignments and counseling session notes. We think you need to see what your daughters have been experiencing." She spread the papers on the coffee table. One was an essay by Sophie, titled, "My Family." In her careful handwriting, Sophie described tension at home, Mommy being angry at Grandma and Grandpa, not understanding why everyone couldn't just be happy. A drawing by Emma showed a family at a dinner table, but Grandma and Grandpa were drawn far away from everyone else, separated by what looked like a wall. Another essay by Emma. "I wish everyone in my family was happy like before we got hurt in the accident." There were journal entries from counseling sessions. Recent ones showed increasing stress. Sophie had written, "Mommy says Grandma and Grandpa need to leave, but Daddy says they can stay. Everyone is mad and I don't know why." Emma's drawing showed a house literally splitting in half down the middle. Mrs. Patterson's voice was gentle but firm. "These girls have been through tremendous trauma. The accident, the long recovery. They need stability and peace. Instead, they've been absorbing adult conflict and stress for months," Miss Torres added. "They're wonderful students, truly sweet children, but we've noticed changes. Sophie has had 3 seizure scares at school in the past month. Fortunately, none developed into full seizures, but the warning signs were there. Emma has been having nightmares. She's told the school nurse about them several times." I looked at those papers, those drawings, seeing our family through the eyes of 2 innocent children, the conflict, the tension, the unspoken resentment. All of it had filtered down to Emma and Sophie, burdening them with adult problems they couldn't understand or fix. Amber made a sound, something between a sob and a gasp. She stood up abruptly, then seemed to crumble. Deep, gasping sobs shook her whole body. She collapsed back onto the sofa, hands covering her face. "I've been so focused on that money," she choked out between sobs, "so focused on what I wanted, on what I thought we deserved. I didn't see what I was doing to my own daughters." Nathan moved to sit beside her, hesitantly putting his arm around her shoulders. Amber turned into him, crying against his chest. Through her tears, Amber told a story she'd never shared with Nathan. About growing up poor in rural Virginia. Her father had left when she was 7. Patricia worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. Amber wore secondhand clothes and watched wealthier classmates go on field trips she couldn't afford. She developed a deep, visceral fear of not having enough. When she met Nathan, stable and employed, she felt safe for the first time in her adult life. But that childhood fear never truly left. When Aunt Dorothy died and left that inheritance, it felt like a lottery win, a chance to never worry again. to give her daughters everything Shed never had. The will's conditions felt like another obstacle, like life conspiring to keep security away from her yet again. Shed snapped. Become obsessive. Lost sight of what actually mattered. I have everything, Amber sobbed. A husband who loves me. 2 beautiful daughters who are alive and healthy. A good job. A nice home. I have everything, and I almost destroyed it all, for money I don't even need. Patricia's voice came from the doorway. None of us had heard her arrive. She must have used her key. I've already researched therapists who specialize in money, anxiety, and family trauma. I'll help you find one, baby girl. Mrs. Patterson said softly. This is what the girls needed to see. Adults who can be honest, who can admit mistakes and work to fix them. I looked at those school papers again, evidence of pain caused by adults too caught up in their own conflicts to see the collateral damage. I thought about Emma and Sophie running away, trying to save their family the only way they knew how. We all made mistakes, I said. Every single one of us failed to communicate, failed to be honest about our needs and fears. But we can choose differently now. We can do better. George nodded. For those girls, for ourselves. We can rebuild this family on truth instead of secrets. Nathan looked at his father with red-rimmed eyes. Will you and Mom really stay? Even after everything? Well, stay nearby, George said. In our own place, with clear boundaries and honest communication. But yes, well, stay in your lives. The girls need us. And we need them. Amber wiped her face. I need to apologize to you both. Really apologize. Not just say words but show through my actions that I'm different. That I'm getting help. I reached across and took her hand. Then that's what we'll look for. Changed actions, not just words. From all of us. 6 months later, early spring brought new life to everything. George and I were sitting on the balcony of our 2-bedroom condo in Cedar Grove, an active senior living community 20 minutes from Nathan's house. The afternoon sun felt warm on my face as I watered the herb garden I'd planted in containers along the railing. Wed found this place 3 months after that family meeting. The community wasn't a nursing home. Nothing like what Amber had threatened. It was independent living for people over 55 who wanted to be around others their age while maintaining complete autonomy. There was a fitness center, a library, organized social activities, and a sense of community we'd been missing. We paid cash for the condo, using $30,000 from our remaining savings. It was ours, free and clear. Nathan had been depositing $800 into our account every single month without fail. Between that, our Social Security, and George's pension, we were financially stable. Not wealthy, but secure. The condo had become our sanctuary. George had joined a woodworking club that met in the community center twice a week. He was building a bookshelf for Emma and Sophie's room, taking his time to get every detail perfect. I'd made friends with several women in the complex, including Dorothy, a retired teacher who had become my walking partner. But we hadn't isolated ourselves from Nathan's family. Sunday dinners rotated between their house and our condo. The twins visited every Wednesday afternoon, a standing date we all looked forward to. We'd bake cookies, help with homework, talk about their week. The relationship felt healthy now, boundaried, special. Amber had completed 90 days of intensive therapy for what her therapist called financial trauma and anxiety. She attended a support group for people with money-related stress every week. She and Nathan were also in marriage counseling together. Some sessions were good, some were difficult, but they were both committed to healing. Amber had taken a full-time position as a senior bookkeeper at a larger firm. The increased income helped her feel more secure. But now she monitored that feeling with her therapist's help. She was learning that her worth wasn't tied to her bank account balance. The $420,000 inheritance had ultimately gone to charity, exactly as Aunt Dorothy's will specified. Amber didn't fight it. In fact, she told me she felt relief when the deadline passed and the decision was final. Patricia had told her she was proud of that choice, proud that Amber had chosen family healing over money. Emma and Sophie were thriving. Sophie hadn't had a single seizure in 5 months. Emma had tried out for the soccer team and made it, playing midfielder with fierce determination. Both girls were doing well in school. Their anxiety visibly decreased. Today was Sunday, and we were heading to Nathan's for dinner. Id made a salad, and George had picked up fresh bread from the bakery near our complex. We arrived at 4 o'clock, the spring air carrying the scent of flowers from Nathan's garden. Amber answered the door, and her smile reached her eyes. "Bridget, George, come in. The girls have been asking when you'd arrive every 10 minutes. Emma and Sophie rushed over, talking over each other about their week. Emma's team had won their soccer game. Sophie had gotten an A on her science project. Normal, beautiful, child problems. Dinner was loud and happy. Nathan grilled chicken while Amber made her grandmother's potato salad recipe. The twins set the table and argued good-naturedly about whose turn it was to feed the dog. After we ate, Nathan asked if he could speak to George and me privately. We went to his home office, and he handed us an envelope. Inside was a check for $15,000. "Dad, I've been putting away extra whenever I could. This is a bonus payment toward what I owe you." George started to protest, but Nathan raised his hand. "No, Dad. This is important to me. You two sacrificed everything for us. I'm going to make it right, even if it takes years." I hugged my son. "We're proud of you, Nathan. Not because of this money. Because of the man you're becoming. The father you are. The way you're fighting for your marriage." We returned to the living room where Amber had brought out photo albums. She showed us pictures from 3 years ago, right after the accident. The girls in hospital beds, small and fragile. George and I at their bedsides, holding their hands. "I want us to remember this," Amber said quietly. "What brought us all together? Not the money, not the conflict. Love. The crisis revealed it, but it was always there." She looked at George and me, her eyes clear and honest. "I wish I could take back what I did. How I treated you, how I manipulated the girls. All of it, but I can't. All I can do is be different now. Be better." I reached across and took her hand. "That's all any of us can do, Amber. None of us handled everything perfectly. We all have things we'd change. But we're here now, trying to do better. That's what matters." Later, driving home to our condo, George said, "We got our family back." I nodded, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "We did. But we got ourselves back first. That was the key." Back at the condo, settled into our comfortable chairs with cups of tea, I thought about everything we'd been through. I remembered that dinner table scene 6 months ago, Amber's rage, George's sorrowful stare, the $5,000 bill that started it all. I thought about what we'd learned through pain. For years I had believed that loving your family meant giving everything, sacrificing endlessly, staying quiet about your own needs. I thought that's what good parents and grandparents did, but pain taught me something different, something truer. Real love requires boundaries. It requires honest communication about difficult things like money, expectations, and needs. When we gave up our home and our retirement savings to help during the twins' crisis, that was love. Pure, selfless love. But when we stayed silent afterward about our own financial security, when we didn't speak up as our savings dwindled, that wasn't love. That was fear. Fear of being seen as selfish. Fear of burdening our son. Fear of conflict. And our silence created space where resentment could grow. Amber's money, anxiety, found fertile ground in our unspoken needs. Nathan's avoidance of difficult conversations flourished in our unwillingness to advocate for ourselves. The moment George stood up with his documented truth, the moment we all finally spoke honestly, that's when real healing could begin. It was painful. Watching Amber break down, seeing Nathan's marriage nearly collapse, discovering the financial decisions made without consulting us. All of it hurt, but that pain was necessary. Like a wound that needs to be cleaned before it can heal, our family needed the infection of secrets and resentment exposed to air and light. I learned that family isn't about keeping score, but it's also not about keeping silent. It's about showing up with truth and grace, setting boundaries with love, asking for what you need while respecting what others need. It's messy and imperfect and requires constant communication. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give your children isn't your sacrifice, it's your strength. When George and I found our own condo, established our independence, asked for fair repayment, we modeled something important for Emma and Sophie. We showed them what healthy adults look like. Not martyrs, not victims, not manipulators. Just people who love each other enough to be honest, to make mistakes, to repair the damage, and to keep showing up. That inheritance money Amber was so desperate for, it wouldn't have brought security. Security doesn't come from bank accounts. It comes from knowing who you are, knowing your worth, and having people in your life who will tell you the truth even when it's hard to hear. I looked around our modest condo. It was smaller than the Vermont house we'd sold. Much smaller. But it was ours, filled with peace and purpose. We had friends here, activities we enjoyed, independence we'd reclaimed. George reached over and took my hand without saying anything. After 47 years of marriage, some things didn't need words. We sat together in the quiet evening, grateful for what we'd learned, for the family we'd rebuilt, for the life we were living. The next morning, I woke to find Emma and Sophie's latest school essays in my email. Miss Torres had started sending them to me with the girls' permission. This week, Sophie had written about her family. She described Sunday dinners where everyone laughed, Wednesday afternoons at Grandma and Grandpa's condo learning to bake, her mom getting help and being happier, her dad smiling more. The essay ended with a line that made me cry happy tears. My family isn't perfect, but we're all trying really hard, and that's what matters. Yes, sweetheart, that's exactly what matters. I want to ask you something. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to choose between keeping peace and standing up for yourself? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you've navigated family conflicts and money issues. If this story touched your heart, please like this video. Subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories about family, resilience, and finding strength in difficult times. And share this with someone who might need to hear it, someone who's struggling with family dynamics or feeling like they've lost themselves in the process of helping others. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I hope you found something in my experience that helps you with your own journey. Remember, it's never too late to find your voice, set boundaries, and rebuild relationships on a foundation of truth and respect. May you have the courage to speak your truth, the wisdom to love with boundaries, and the peace that comes from knowing your worth. Take care of yourselves, and take care of each other.